with 4 days to the deadline for collection of the PVC permanent voters card, and also we have the countdown to the general elections, and also 9 days to the deadline of depositing your own Naira note. A lot of expectations are coming from the citizens. Good morning and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we take you down through the stories that are dropping on our Nigerian newspaper, and also we'll be looking at how we can analyze and the way forward. I'm Sela Elisha Dasham, of course, and I have Rachel Tanzi with me. Rachel, good morning.
Morning, Sela.
Happy new month.
Thank you, and I wish you the same.
Thank you so much. And to our viewers, a happy new month to you too. We are live on Facebook and on YouTube. You can do well. Drop your comment, drop your contribution on any story that is of interest to you this morning, and later on we will open the phone line so you can call us in and let us hear what your views are concerning any story that is of interest to you. And we will be running quickly through the papers, and Rachel will be taking us through the Nigerian Standard.
On the Nigerian Standard, corruption ranking, Nigeria falls 4 places. Pengasan calls for revocation of petrol station licenses. Banks must accept all notes after deadline, coming from Emefela. You can read that on page 2. And on UTME, personnel email compulsory for JAMB registration. And the big story on the Nigerian Standard, court reject use of temporary voters cards for the 2023 election. At the downside of the paper, we have cashless policy to track illicit election financing, coming from Osibanjo. You can start on the front page of the Nigerian Standard and continue on page 2. And that's all the news on the Nigerian Standard.
And on Vanguard newspaper, Catholic bishops to the federal government, save Nigerians from wattle killing, looting and kidnapping. That you can find on page 27. And Emefele is saying Naira redesign, no Nigerian will lose money. So for those who are concerned, the CBN governor has clarified your doubt that you will not lose your money. You can read more of that on page 11. The big story, election logistic in danger with fuel scarcity, coming from INEC. We will mobilize about 100,000 vehicles, 4,000 boats for deployment of personnel and materials to 176,846 polling units, spreading across 8,809 registration areas in the 774 local government areas nationwide, coming from the INEC chairman, Yakubu. NNPC assures electoral body of adequate supply. And we have things will change before the polls, coming from Tinubu's spokesperson. INEC should double check transport unit, coming from Labour Party. We are hoping it will be brought under control, coming from the PDP campaign. And of course, there are lots of concern. Just like I said, when the APC presidential candidate was brought about the fuel scarcity, the Naira redesign as a way of sabotaging his election or his own presidential aspiration, we can see that INEC are also, of the same view, because with fuel not being available, then we know that definitely logistic will be kind of very hard for them running one, from one place to another, looking at the 774 local government areas and all of that. So we can see promises coming from NNPC saying that they will not let that to happen. I'm yet to hear what, in case of, even if there's going to be petrol, we are hoping to see how about the electricity. Are we going to be having constant electricity? There are lots of things apart from logistics that INEC should be concerned about too, even though they have made us to be relaxed. The fact that if it's talking about our electoral transmission of results, we shouldn't be worried about that. We're also hoping that our beavers will not be giving us problem. The card readers will not be rejecting fingerprints. So I just hope that everything will be in place, because it's just like a twinkle of an eye. 24 days is just by the corner. So it's not on that 24 day that we begin to see them running helter-skelter, and we hear that some polling unit elections have not started even as of 12 p.m. So I just hope that all that is needed, logistics and other things, will be in place so that when the elections come, it will just go, very smoothly without any hitches or anything of that.
Of course, I was going to say, I hope that INEC INEC have done the needful, that just as you said, we wouldn't have a situation where some polling units will not start election at the appropriate time. In the sense, I want to believe that INEC have transported every material and equipment needed for elections to their various destinations, to every ward, to every district, to every unit, and it's just a stone throw. Then perhaps all they have to worry about on the day of election is taking their staff, the ad hoc staffs, to the place for election, but not that INEC should be saying perhaps the materials haven't gotten to where they are now. I want to believe that that should be out of the way if they've done their job properly. So I'm hoping that there won't be that kind of issue when it comes to election.
Of course, Rachel. Let's look at other stories still on the Vanguard newspaper. On PVC, Obi insists over 3 million Nigerian students must vote, meet the EU observers. And we saw that even on the papers yesterday when NAS were saying that they have to participate in the election. So I just hope INEC will do something. The federal government should give smuggling. And on page 19, we have from Osun Governor Tribunal judgment, opponents of Beavers out to discredit it, coming from Agini, and that's on politics. And we have a picture story here where we can see the CBN governor together with other stakeholders during the hearing yesterday of the House of Reps, because we know he has been rejecting that that meeting over and over from last year. Finally, he met with the House of Reps yesterday, the ACWA committee that was set up to look into the redesign. And so that we can see here the picture story. So for those who want to know more about what the meeting was about, you can grab the paper, the Vanguard, and read more detail of any story that's of interest to you.
On the Daily Sun newspaper, Tinubu in Anambra promises to industrialize, address erosion challenges. You can read his promises on page 6. Multiple accidents killed 2 in Lagos. And the big story, CBN will redeem old Naira notes beyond February 11. The writer says bank customers flee long queues at ATM, soaring POS charges. You can read all of that on page 2 and 25. Obi to universities give students holiday to vote. Lekki Deep Port turns new bride as landlocked countries dump Cotonou, Togo, and Niger others to route cargoes through Nigeria. Akwa Ibom PDP replies Tinubu calls him Senile ancestor. APC candidates comment insulting coming from Governor Emmanuel. Government stops pro-Tinubu Shetima solidarity rally in Niger over security concerns. Fifth colonists spreading fake news to destabilize election coming from the federal government. And there's the writer that says diaspora voting, Nigerians living abroad to no faith February 15th, and you can read that on page 6. And we have Gates Foundation and marks $35 million for Nigerian African farmers. You can read that on page 28. Still on the Daily Sun newspaper, petrol scarcity may affect elections logistics, says INEC. At the downside of the paper, Rivers will punish PDP leadership, coming from Wike, and you can read why he's saying that on page 25. We have a picture story coalition of civil society groups protesting continuous scarcity of redesigned Naira notes in Lagos yesterday. And some of the things they are saying is, we say no to hoarding of new notes. We support new Naira notes redesign, and EFCC arrests bank officials holding Naira notes now. And that's all the news on Daily Sun.
And on the Leadership newspaper, don't de-enfranchise over 3 million students, Obi tells INEC. And we have Naira redesign, no Nigerian will lose money, coming from Emi Fede. And then we have trending, INEC at Chatham House says 2023 polls will hold as planned. And looking at the numbers, CBN stabilized Naira with $15.3 billion in 2022. You can read the trending and also the numbers on page 2 of the Leadership newspaper. Reps approve the PNB 1 trillion naira loan defer 22.7 trillion naira request. The House of Representatives yesterday approved the request of President Muhammadu Buhari to recall an additional 1 trillion naira from the CBN. The loan, according to the President, Buhari will be used to fund the 2022 supplementary budget. The lawmakers, however, deferred a request to scrutinize the 22.7 trillion naira way and means loan pending further engagement with the executive by the Joint Committee to allow for a thorough and detailed work and submission. So you can read more of that story on page 7. INEC worries over worsening fuel crisis ahead of polls. That can be found on page 7. And then we have Osun politicians want to discredit beavers ahead of polls. Petrol scarcity, military police warn marketers. And we have Emir of Dutse dies at 78. You can read more on page 16. And at the leadership conference and award Undiga, technology can be used to rig the election, and the writers following that story says credibility of election depends on INEC and court, coming from Ozibanjo. 2023 will be the best in nation's history, coming from Lawan. Delivering credible polls challenge of the moment, coming from Mrs. Inda Isaac. And then we have we will tackle drug menace, Frotal Malwa declares, and then leadership award inspiration for further accomplishments. And then we have I will make NSCDC world class, coming from Odi. You can read more of that story on page 4. And outside we have a picture story. You can do well, grab the leadership newspaper and read detail of any story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, Tinubu's threat against Akwa Ibom governor affirms his autocratic tendencies. PDP campaign cancel. I will restore peace, security to Sokoto as president. This is Atiku promising us. Reps approve Buhari's request for restructuring 22.7 trillion naira ways and means owed CBN. And on Buhari's visit, Kano stone pelters sponsored by politicians, terrorist sympathizers coming from the presidency. And the big story, only CBN will accept all naira notes after February deadline, coming from Mefele. And the writer says, new cash policy will moderate inflation, stabilize exchange rate, strengthen naira. Finally appears before reps. CBN EFCC arrests 3 bank staffers for selling new naira notes. You can read all of that story on page 8. Kwankwaso in Ibadan says, I'm open to restructuring. Police stop planned APC rally in Niger over security threat. Suspected herders kill DPO, 5 others in Benue State. And you can read that story on page 26. Many injured as PDP, APC supporters clash in Osun. Violence erupts as Makinde ends campaign in Iganga scores injured. And we have still on elections, INEC makes requests for seamless fuel supply. Unstable political environment, coming from the NNPCL GMD. So I believe he's assuring INEC that they will have enough supply of fuel, and you can read that on page 30. At the downside of the paper, we have Transcorp increases power generation to national grid. You can read that on page 7, and there is a picture story where we can see CEOs from different power companies in the country, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Punch newspaper, NNPC annexed end 24-year production sharing contract. That can be found on page 30. Reps dump 22.7 trillion naira loan request, OK 1 trillion naira borrowing. Fuel scarcity threaten elections and national security, coming from INEC and the CDS. And we have coming from the director how 100 bandits ambushed and killed 7 NSCDC personnel. And that's really a sad one. We hope that they will be brought to book. And still on the issue of the new Naira racketing, EFCC to raid Lagos, Kaduna, Port Harcourt currency hawkers. CBN bursts multiple debit card withdrawals, threatening stiffer sanction. Emifele meets with reps, other banks to accept all notes after the deadline. Central Bank stop all notes payout, commission proceeds at ATM point. And we can see the commotion over there in Abuja and Ogun, Lagos State, and that's just a few out of the many other states that are having commotion at the ATMs. Downside of the paper, one killed as tanker crushes 3 Lagos tricycles. Not again. We saw where a container killed over 20 passengers in Lagos, and
Yes.
right now we're seeing tanker crushes 3 Lagos tricycles. And I do not know if we're yet to learn from things that have happened previously. We keep allowing these things to happen over and over and over. And I just hope that a federal road safety together, I've been saying this, the commissioners of road and transport and minister will be able to do something, especially for highways. And then if it is possible, let us have a time where all of these tankers, all of these big trucks will actually be plying the road. When we know that the smaller vehicles are not running about their businesses, this will to a large extent reduce the number of casualties, if possible eliminate it totally. And then we need to check the roadworthiness of most of these cars, you know. It's because some of these cars are not worthy to be on the road. It's either their tires are expired, the drivers are tired and exhausted. Just I think last week or so, on my way going to town, I saw one of these tankers driver was on the floor, and then he was being found. That is to show that he was exhausted, and as a result of that, he couldn't move. The truck was in the middle of the road, and this is a road that most people are actually flying the road, and then it costs a hold up and all of that. So these are things that we need to check, because if we don't check this and we keep recording casualties over and over and over, so I hope we learn from our lessons so that these things won't keep reoccurring over and over again. Still on the Punch newspaper, protests as Ekweremadu's wife appeared in UK court, and we have Labour Party governor candidate orders boycott Obi's Yola rally. You can read that on page 8. That's all on the Punch newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, Governor Obiodun commissions fire station 3.1 kilometer Vespa Oloshe Road in Ifo local government. Transcorp increases power generation to national grid as it commissions rehabilitated GT Unit 20. NNPC ends 24-year-old production contract with Adex Petroleum. And the big story on Nigerian News Direct, banks to accept old Naira notes after deadline, coming from the CBN as Emefiele appears before House of Reps. Money supply in Nigeria raises to 5.14 trillion naira in 2022 despite policies. And you can read all of that report on page 3. Presidential rally, Osun APC raises alarm over plot by PDP to unleash mayhem, and we can see a picture story of the rally. Still on fuel scarcity, INEC fears disruption of movement of election materials and personnel. And that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On the Nation newspaper, absence of sick child store Ekweremadu's trial, that you can find on page 6. NNPCL CDS threaten action over fuel scarcity. Nigeria needs a thinker, not a tanker. You can read more of that coming from the APC, and you can read what they have to say about that. And on the presidential poll, we have Tinubu Shetima for Osun Thursday, Ekiti Friday. Atiku promises to fight poverty in Sokoto with $10 million. Kwankwaso, I will end corruption and petrol subsidy. And then we are having Buhari and others, tight security at the border. So you can read more of that on page 5 and also 28 of the Nation newspaper. The big story, Emefiele banks to blame for scarcity of the new Naira note. CBN chief to Nigerians, you won't lose your old notes. Deadline extension likely. And we have a caption here that said, we have seen the new Naira being used in parties. What we saw being stamped on people at parties were packages of the new Naira note, which means they, that is the banks, had breached certain aspect of the guidance note we gave to them. So you can check more of that story inside the paper. Tinubu promises prosperity in Cross River, end to erosion in Anambra State. And we have NNPCL investing 2.6 trillion naira on 70 roads. Downside of the paper, Nigeria improves in TI's latest corruption perception index. Where our stand is on the index of corruption, you have to check page 6 of the Nation newspaper, and that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, PDP condemns Tinubu's alleged threat to Governor Emmanuel. coming from Ekeremedu. Wife in court as trial continues today. You've missed deadline. Name your presidential candidate. Peter Side turns Wike. IMF urges central bank to stay vigilant, revises Nigeria's growth to 3.2%, and you can read that on page 15 of the Guardian newspaper. And the big story, cash squeeze intensifies, stalls business transactions. The writer says CBN will still collect old notes after February 10 deadline. This is coming from the governor himself. CBN uncovers mismanaged 4 million naira new notes in Ogun, knocks commercial banks. Online transfer take days to complete, dispute increases. And we have POS merchants, ration cash increase charges to 10%. Banks reduce ATM withdrawal limits to 5,000. Fari Carpet Emefola says policy likely to disrupt 2023 polls. And you can continue with that story on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Violence, internal crisis mark campaign rallies in Niger and Rivers. Darie Iyeme released major setback in Nigeria's anti-corruption wars, says TI. You can read why he is saying that on page 2. We have picture stories. There's on most of our papers where we can see the queue at the ATM banks and then the meeting with the CBN governor with the reps. And that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
You know, Richard, before we move to the next paper, I'm really concerned. Why is it that we're having so much of internal crisis, violence in this campaign? It seems as if right now most of these politicians or the supporters are taking this election to be a do or die affair. And I believe that, even though we've said this before, but I don't think we should get tired of saying it, what is INEC doing about this? If all of these parties have signed a peace accord and it's expected that you have a certificate, you gave your signature down, that is, you have given your consent that not only will you be peaceful, but even your supporters will be peaceful. Because if you talk to them, of course, they will listen to you because they want you to become the president at the end of the day. So I do not know why we have failed to realize that as a nation. We keep saying violence left, right, and center. The president was attacked. When he went to Kano on Monday, we saw Ubi being attacked, we saw Atiku being attacked, and it seems as if almost most of these presidential candidates have been attacked. We've even heard last year where some, stakeholders have been attacked, maybe a member of House or all of that. So I'm beginning to wonder, why is violence and internal crisis becoming the order of the day? Is there something we are lacking as a nation or as individuals, or is it that the people who are supposed to uphold the law have refused to do what is expected of them to do?
Well, I would like to say there are a lot of factors to this violence. Sometimes it's just disagreement in the parties, and some of these violence are also sponsored. For example, like the attack on the president in Kano. Kano is an APC state. We know that the current president, won Kano during the 2015 election, and then you wonder that the people who put him in power are now stoning him or attacking and all of that. And if you want to have a clearer picture, you will see that it doesn't make sense, because up till now Kano is an APC state, meaning if it's normal, if everything going on well, they should still be behind the APC, supporting the president and whoever is the next presidential candidate under the APC. So you wonder, there are so many factors around the violence, but we can't rule anyone out. It's all of them playing. Some of the attacks are sponsored. Some of them are real, genuine misunderstanding within parties. And of course, we will keep saying INEC needs to act, because whether we like it or not, these politicians are not standing and condemning this attack, but rather they are fueling hate by the things they say about one another. When you stand and you keep, you accuse, if Tinubu should stand and accuse Atiku for money laundering, and Atiku should stand and accuse Tinubu for narcotics and all of that. These are all fueling hate indirectly. You don't have to directly tell your people to attack a certain convoy or a campaign, but the things you say, the negative things you say about yourselves, your opponent in this election is not everybody that is matured. We have hoodlums, we have touts in Nigeria, we have people who make a living from this type of violence. Let's tell ourselves from the truth. So as long as, just as we said it, INEC is not taking a strict penalty on what politicians are saying and what they are instigating, we will continue to have all of this. And as long as we have our security agents doing the underground work, like we said about the INEC facilities being destroyed, we need some investigation. And up till now, nothing is being said about all of these attacks. Like, we don't have any report yet of who are behind these things, who were the people caught destroying all of these properties. If they were interrogated, some information should have been gotten by now, and whoever was the sponsor behind this attack, or if this individual just did this attack by themselves, by their own will, out of whatsoever anger, we should know, and that should be stopped, and then it will help preventing such attacks from happening. It's a lot of work, but I want to believe, I keep saying it, we have the capacity to solve all of these problems in Nigeria if everybody would do his work diligently. But then it's a lot of factors that is causing this violence. But we'll never know unless it's being dug to the root, and then we are being told what really is the problem.
So I just hope that we do that, because just like we said, INEC do not have the power, but then
They don't,
the sister bodies that should work with them, security agencies, should checkmate all of this thing, because this is already an eye-opener when we see the facilities being destroyed. Imo State is one of the places that have been attacked over and over, and some other parts. So if this is an eye-opener for them, we should be able to keep our fingers crossed to make sure that even the INEC officials that will be sent to various parts will be safe at the end of the day. We'll not hear that somebody lost his life or somebody lost her life as a result of all of this. So we keep our fingers crossed, and we hope that all that is needed to be done will be done. Before we move to the next paper, we'd like to take a break at this moment so we can lead you through the stories. What do you feel about the internal crisis and also the violence that have been mirroring most of the campaigns that have been happening, and also with the fact that the CBN have said they will still be accepting the old Naira notes from commercial banks even after February 10th. So when we come back, we'd love to take your calls and also your comments when they drop. So do not go anywhere. We'll be right back after the timeout. Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Network Television, and we've been looking at a number of stories that have been on the paper. CBN saying no one will lose money after February 10, and also some of the crises that have been mirroring some campaigns that have been happening in some states in the country. And these are many other stories we've been looking at on the papers this morning. I still have Rachel here with me. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this with me. And remember, please, we're live on Facebook and also on YouTube. Drop your comment, drop your contribution, and our numbers are displayed on your screen. Do well to call us, and remember, when you call us, to turn down the volume of your TV set or totally move away so we can actually have a very good communication here in the studio. And we'll quickly go through the paper, the next paper we are having, and that is the New Telegraph newspaper. And we have IMF raises Nigeria's 2023 growth forecast to 3.2%. And the fourth quarter of 2022, Fidelity Bank profit up 32.6% to 47.163 billion naira. That you can find on page 25. Still on New Telegraph, we have police stop Tinubu Shetima rally in Niger as APC SWC direct members to boycott campaign. NNPCL takes other Adex petroleum asset. You can find that on page 2 and 6. Election not do or die affair. Catholic Church tell politicians and political parties. You can find that on page 5. Beavers is ultimate determinant of accreditation, not printing report. You can find that story also on page inside the paper actually. And we have the big story, which is on Naira redesign. No one will lose money after February 10, coming from the CBN Governor Emifere. Says old note not legal tender after deadline, but will still be accepted by CBN only. Uncovers mismanagement of 4 million naira by commercial banks in Ogun. Reps approve 1 trillion naira ways and means advances. And on presidential campaign will be once a week holiday for varsity students. That you can see on page 6, 8, 29 and 30. Flooding Naira devaluation to high commodity prices in 2023. This is a report, and we've been seeing that report from the beginning of the year, where we saw that rain will be starting early this year. So Nigerians should brace up for the worst and also do all they need to do to prevent their loved ones and also properties. And still on the paper, we have another story that says IPOP orders give unknown gunmen till February 20th to vacate the southeast. And I wonder what the government are doing in these various, or the governors of these various states are doing in regards to that, Rachel. Because yesterday, remember, we had a caller from someone of IPOP, and he made mention of the fact that they should just give them their country. But I remember encouraging him that united we stand, divided we fall, because we cannot fight against ourselves, regardless of what religion you belong to, regardless of where you're coming from. It's important. Okay, we have a caller, Rachel. Hello, Mr. Haruna. Good morning.
Hello.
Haruna. All right, I can hear you. Okay, it seems the network's a bit bad. All right, Mr. Haruna, I really appreciate if you can call us back, because we really love to hear your takes on the stories that are on the papers, you know. So, Richard, I just hope that we'll do the expected at the end of the day and not just leave things the way they are.
You know, the thing is that as Nigerians, we always feel that somehow dividing the country is the way forward, because when we sit down, we feel every country, every state, rather region, have something unique and special to them, and that they can do something about it. And I feel that is the challenge we're having with IPOP. They think they are good enough to stay on their own. But regardless, no region, no geopolitical region has been able to independently survive. So far, so good. So what makes you think that you can survive out of Nigeria? We do have the capacity. Every state have their unique wealth, but I'm yet to see a year that have harnessed that wealth to the extent that they can say goodbye to the rest of Nigeria and be on their own. So I just want to agree with you, is together we will divided will fall and united we will stand, and Nigeria is just better together.
All
if
right.
everything will
Let's take
align.
this call from Mr. Christian. Hello, Mr. Christian. Good morning. Hello, Mr. Christian.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I want to contribute on the area of CBN.
All right.
I say that the old Naira note is only accepted by CBN. Now, old women in the village, how will they go to CBN after February 10? That's the question I want to ask. Then the second one is this IPOP. I didn't get the what IPOP was saying clearly.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Christian, for calling. The first question he asks is about the fact that if CBN are saying they will be accepting the old note after the deadline, that is after you have deposited your money to the commercial banks,
Yeah.
because it's only the commercial banks that have access to the CBN.
Yes.
So do well, do not wait till the deadline. Finally, if you have a way of depositing your own naira note, go deposit it in the commercial banks, and the commercial banks will do their own part by depositing the money to CBN, so they'll be able to get the new naira note. So, and then secondly, the story about the iPod, they said they are giving unknown gunmen till February 20th to vacate the southeast. And in as much as, just like you were saying, and I wanted to contribute, I wish that this energy they are saying they want to leave the country, they should just target it to fighting corruption, fighting insecurity,
Yeah.
Nigerian government, and we all will appreciate them for putting their energy in that relation. But causing mayhem, causing confusion and chaos is what we're all right. We have Mr. Henry from Enugu. Good morning. Uh-oh, we lost that caller. We'd love you to call us back again, Mr. Henry. Well, let's still look at other stories still on the New Telegraph, where we have the next story here. We have fuel scarcity will affect 2023 polls coming from INEC, and we have some riders following that story. We are facing existential danger in Nigeria coming from the Fulani pastoralists. So you can read more. Suspected headers kill DPO and 2 kids in renewed attack on Benue communities. Downside, we have a study that ties moderate, intense physical activity to good sleep. So for those who hate some physical activities, should get involved in that if you want to rest well. And that's all on the New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, I'm in talks with Kwankwaso Obi for support coming from Atiku. Promises to open all Nigeria's borders. Nigeria qualifies for Under-17 World Volleyball Championship, and you can read the details on page 19. NNPCL takes over Adex Petroleum PSC assets. The big story, INEC raises fresh alarm. The writer says fuel scarcity threat to credibility of polls. INEC says INEC meets NNPCL to find lasting solution. Desperate politicians trying to clone beavers. Relief as Emefiele says banks will accept old naira notes after deadline. Stone pelting presidency reacts to PDP's crocodile tears, says Buhari's support intact, coming from page 5. Reps approve Buhari's 1 trillion naira loan request from CBN, diverse 22.7 trillion naira. You can read that on page 4. Computer Society calls for fine tuning of beavers before election. You can read that on page 5. And we have a picture story where we can see Buhari in Jigawa, President Muhammadu Buhari accompanied by the Jigawa Governor Alhaji Muhammadu and other chairmen at a state visit, and that was yesterday in 2023, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On First newspaper, we have banks will still accept the old notes after deadline, Emefiele tells reps. And we have other story, I will reduce unemployment drastically in my first term, coming from Tinubu. Still on 2023, guard your utterances, Catholic Bishop warned candidates. And the big story for the First News 2023 election, I'm in alliance talk with Kwankwaso and Obi, coming from Atiku, says neither of the two presidential candidates pose any threat to me. One of them likely to agree, coming from the PDP presidential flag bearer, argues voters, not governors, determine elections outcome nowadays. Still on First News, Wike calls for protest vote against Atiku in Rivers. Sultan caution politicians against insult and abuse. We can see the Sultan is also agreeing with the bishops of candidates should stop saying bad things about one another. And then we have how police soldiers stop pro-Tinubu's rally in Niger following order from above. So you can grab the First News and read any story that is of interest to you.
On Sweet Crude Report, oil-producing states share 135 billion naira derivation funds in 3 months. And the big story, fraud allegation account for 26.5 billion naira allocation to PAP, Idiomu told. Questions raises over appointment as oil theft panel chair. NIMASA meets with 5 banks over disbursement of cabotage fund. And you can continue with that story on page 3. CSOs issue 14-day ultimatum to NNPCL security agencies. You can start with the story on the front page and continue on page 4 of Sweet Crude Reports. And that's all the news on Sweet Crude Reports.
On Daily Independent, we have Independent Awards send a strong message coming from the Universal Insurance boss. Suspend as Wike Alliance failed to announce presidential candidates. And on New Naira Note, which is a big story, no Nigerian will lose money despite the deadline coming from Emifede, accuses commercial banks of breaching CBN guidelines, and then says the EFCC, ICPC, NFIU working with CBN on notes monitoring. Reps pass Buhari 1 trillion naira ways and means loan requests. Civil society package banks sabotaging access to the New Naira Note. That you can read also on page 7. Again, Nigeria drops by 4 points in the latest corruption perception index ranking, and I hope we keep dropping.
Yeah.
We keep dropping. That is my joy and happiness, because at the mid last year we saw the last report was given and we dropped. So I'm just looking forward to the fact that before the mid of this year we'll also be dropping. It's not just enough for us to be dropping, but then inwardly, can you feel the impact that corruption is dropping? I think that is where we truly know that yes, there's no more corruption, that I can actually go to the bank without paying a little stipend before I get what I want. So we look forward to the corruption dropping. Still on Daily Independent, NNPC takes over operation of the PSC asset from Adex Petroleum, and then Buhari appoints Shegu Awolowo Secretary National Action Committee on the AFCFA. Downside of the paper, on post-2023 poll dispute, NBA threatened action against area judges. And the last story I'll be taking says Nigeria's public debt stock increases to 44.06 trillion naira in the third quarter of 2022. We have a picture story, so you can grab the Daily Independent and read any story that's of interest to you.
On business day, 10 reforms to turn tide of Nigeria's worst ever Moody rating. You can find that story on page 31. Lagos airport rigs, bird strikes, air pollution as refuse piles. NNPC appoints Jajere as Antan MD after Alex takeover. You can read that on page 29. And the big story on business day, New Naira petrol scarcity, ground businesses are still slump, easing inflation see threatened. And that's all the news on business day.
All right, let's take a look at the Nature newspaper. We have farmers, pastoral demand repairs, upgrade of the Kanua Air Dam. You can read more of that story on the front page and also on page 5. And I think more should be done to address that. Environmentalist Emir of Duse, Dr. Nuhu Sanusi, he's actually dead. And we have from 1945 to 2023, President Buhari and Jigawa Governor, Nature News publisher, mourn for his death. Still on Nature News, we have poor water facility upkeep costs Nigeria 207 million naira yearly. Poor water facility upkeep costs Nigeria 207 million naira yearly. So you can read more of that story inside the Nature newspaper. Guinea understudies Nigeria agency in local content operations production. Downside of the paper, we have Nigeria qualify for volleyball girls under 19 world championship, and I'm really happy that we have scaled through. So we wish the Nigerian girls volleyball team all the best, and we hope that they keep going higher and higher. And that's all on the Nature newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, as the transfer windows are coming to the end, the deadline days moves, and you can see ZH moving from Chelsea to Paris Saint-Germain. We can see Sabotage moving from Bayern to Man United, and other players from Chelsea to Arsenal and other clubs. And we have Murphy, Nice, 0.9 man, and Joshua wants Fury Wilder in 2023. Ericsson out for 4 months. The big story, new coach, new down. Eagle star Iwobi, Aribo and Bassi face uncertain future following sacking of their managers. At the downside of the paper, Liverpool dealt Konote injury blow. Devils receive over 10 bids for Elenga. You can read that on page 5, and that's all the news on Punch Sport Extra.
All right, let's round it up by looking at the Business Standard newspaper, where we have recovery won't be faster until FY27 IMF projects. You can read more of that. We have a graph under to explain more of that, and we have new wage board for garment workers and cats. So you can read all of that story too. Will reform work this time? This is a question coming from different people, where we need to carefully keep an eye on the bank's capital debt ratio. The directors need to play a decisive role when adjusting price. Social protection for low earners and the poor should be expanded to alleviate the added burden. If the reforms are executed, allocation to social security, education, and health workers will not face any problem. The government should go slow on a number of reforms, such as phasing out the power and energy subsidies. And I think this is not just to Bangladesh, but I hope that we also take that here in Nigeria. There are certain policies and reforms that are not favorable to some particular sectors. So I hope that we consider those sectors, especially the health sector, where we're still having our health workers leaving the shores of Nigeria. Students are still looking for scholarship to leave. It's not bad, but when we see that it's just a means of running away from your country. So I hope that we look at certain reforms that we make. If we're talking about restructuring, how will it benefit low earners? We have small and medium scale enterprises that, as a result of this scarcity of fuel, have been affected. If you increase the price of something, at the end of the day, your customers will no longer come. You are the losing end, and all of this things because of certain reforms that have been set. So we hope that this is not just to the people of Bangladesh, but then that even here in Nigeria, we'll look at the reforms that we put, if we will benefit at the end of the day. Still looking at the TBS papers, we have many other stories on the paper. So if you are interested, you can do well, grab the paper and read any story that is of interest to you. And that is how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you so much for keeping a day with us. Thank you, Rachel, for always being here. Thank you to our producer, to all the crew members. Thank you to the general manager, our supporters, and also those who are following us, and also to the Equa executive. Until we come your way again tomorrow, do have a blessed day ahead.
Compose a song on the Equa 2023 theme, Occupy Till I Come, Luke 19 verse 13, and stand a chance to minister live on the 10th of February 2023 at the Equa Theme Song Concert. Venue, Equa International Conference Center. Submit your songs to 070-4611-2545 via WhatsApp. Entry closes 8th February 2023.
Equa TV International keeps you lifted 24/7. fixes your day and makes it fulfilled with messages of hope and salvation.
Sin and the devil, they always walk hand in hand together.
Christ too and the ministry of the Lord also will be promoted.
This aspect of David's experience we read in our passage of consideration brings this situation very near to ours.
He is majestic in holiness. Praise